Thanks for the introduction, Nick. Thanks for everybody for attending. It's a real opportunity for Nimy. We don't normally come to too many conferences, mainly because we've been engaged in the last couple of years since listing exploration of a new greenstone belt in Western Australia, and that takes a little bit of time to unlock and to be able to articulate exactly what we're looking at. The reason that we're here, we're talking about gallium today. The greenstone belt has a lot more going for it than that. Having said that, we've moved the gallium along the gallium critical path to supply quite significantly over the last probably year and a half. We first discovered the gallium, as I said, about a year and a half ago, and like most discoveries, it was by accident. No one's out there looking for gallium, looking for copper zinc. And we got a couple of drill holes there with plus 100 grams per tonne gallium over significant intervals, and which motivated us to start looking at what gallium was about. And as I'll go through the presentation and how that's evolved, you start to understand what we understand at this point in time. And I suppose not too many of you have heard of Nimy Resources. I'm actually the founder of the company, held the ground since 2015, or a portion of it, and expanded it out and listed in, I think, late 21, 22. I think our market cap sits around 24 million. We think it's undervalued, but everybody up here would say the same thing. I'll go through essentially what is a pretty interesting story to us. I think emerging in the world around the critical minerals, gallium's starting to become at the forefront. You'll notice with the US and Australia, when they talk about critical minerals, in the top three is gallium. So I'll just start this off. Okay. Just quickly, our board, we've assembled a very strong leadership team. Most of you should be, I would have thought, familiar with Neil Warburton, ex-IGO originally. Myself, Bruce Stewart, finance background, ex-Jeffreys Bank. Henko Geraldine is our company secretaries. We have Fergus and John Simmons, or Dr. John Simmons, both very experienced geologists and specialists in their fields. Just a quick snapshot of what I'm going to be going through. Gallium is an essential metal, crucial for military and national security. This is really coming out of the US, Europe, through Asia. And the story is really starting to crystallise. Probably a year and a half ago, you were hearing about gallium and semiconductors, but not a lot of the dynamics around the market and where it was going and what the expansion might well be. China supplies virtually all up to about 98%, some of the numbers that we've seen of gallium in the world, put export restrictions on around August 2023 and reinforced that late last year. So the Western world is dangerously exposed and desperate to end this total dependence, and that's why gallium is one of the first mentioned. We've made a very large high-grade gallium discovery in WA, and the key to that is high grade. As you'll see, we've got a JORC resource there. I'll go through that a little bit, but also the prospectivity of the surrounding area. We've only really touched on the tip of the iceberg there. The resource itself extends over 400 metres. We've just done a detailed magnetic survey because the gallium is associated with a chlorite schist and is magnetic, so it's reasonably easy to pick out. The deposit could continue for another 3.5 kilometres, in which case it would be one of the biggest gallium deposits in the world. At this point in time, I think it is in terms of grade, the highest grade that's attained JORC status. We've just sent a sample batch to the US, and I'll talk about why we've done that a little bit, but that has gone to the US for testing. That'll go to US universities and also to a defence industry company, and it's really looking about the finished product there and how to process it. I'll just mention that. In terms of what we're doing in Western Australia, we've also just delivered a bulk high-grade sample to commence the process of producing a high-grade concentrate. So our plan at this point in time is to get to that high-grade concentrate and ship that at this point to the US for processing. We're also in talks with the federal government. We've had a couple of discussions around accessing the new $1.2 billion Critical Minerals Strategic Reserve Fund. I think we'd be at the forefront of that, given that, again, gallium is one of the top three that they're looking at. And I'll just quickly step through the critical path that we're following. As I've mentioned, we made the discovery, and that was April 2024. On the right-hand side, there you can see a cross-section of the mineralised areas. So again, you know, that was quite a surprise to us, but some of the intervals there, we had up to 369 grams per tonne gallium trioxide in one of the holes over a metre, and another one, where was it? It was 495 grams per tonne. So really high numbers, and in pretty healthy intervals of above 100. Did some follow-up drilling, just have a look at the extent of that and increase the high-grade footprint. We've done soils, and then we commenced a drill program in May 2025, and some soil sampling to see how much further this might go. And we've just finished some high-resolution magnetics that have indicated that it's another 3.5 kilometres of prospective area. We've just put out recently our maiden JORC inferred resource. 7.2 million tonnes at 102. I think the important bit there, it's not actually on there. Oh yes, it is 740 contained tonnes of the metal, which doesn't sound like a lot, but going forward, I suppose if you put it into context, a lot of the gallium at the moment in the world is produced as a byproduct of zinc, mainly zinc, I suppose, and bauxite, and they produce about, I think the best ones produce about 40 tonnes per annum. Now, if we're going to make up the shortfall from the Chinese ban, which is around, at this point, 1,000 tonnes, and extrapolate it out, I think within a couple of years to 3,000 tonnes, that's a lot of potentially uneconomic production via the zinc and bauxite mines. We also have rare earths in there, but that is secondary. You'll see a lot of companies out there that are rare earths that are, have also gallium reserves, a lot lower in terms of the grade. We're leading with the gallium. We have a fair bit of belief in where this market is going, and being a first mover, I think, is pretty important. We have a relationship with a group in the US, M2I Global, and they've been tasked with providing critical metals into the US, generally around military stockpiles, but extending into the private sector as well. There's two main uses that we see that are going to drive the growth, and both of them are critical. Certainly the US military applications is a wide range of applications in the military, but the other one, the big one really, is the semiconductors. If you think there are, I think, around about 150, 152 data centres in the world today. By 2030, the forecast is for that to be tripled. So it's a lot of gallium. It's a lot of gallium that will then flow downstream for the everyday user. In terms of M2I, we've signed 2 agreements. The one that's facilitated the shipment to the US of the material for testing really is to establish that supply chain post the concentrate. So they're active in the US at the moment trying to secure funding to build that plant. And the test material will provide obviously really valuable input into that economic case. Yeah, I've spoken a little bit about this already. There was about 100 kilos that went across in 10 kilo packages. And again, that'll be distributed to US universities and Defence Force companies, or facing companies to determine what is the best processing route. A little bit more about the high-grade concentrate. We've delivered, I think it's just under 600 kilograms to Strategic Metallurgy, which is a Perth-based company. They've been tasked with producing a high-grade concentrate from that material. They also will follow that through with a scoping study, start to work out what the economics really look like, which is not easy at this point because a lot of it's around the forecasting on price, and the market has been traditionally opaque. What we've seen is it's starting to crystallise. So we're starting to get an understanding of what the real demand will be, what the strategic imperatives are in terms of establishing that supply into Western economies. So it's pretty dynamic at this point in time, and I think we're well placed by producing a high-grade concentrate to feed that. There's a couple of initiatives out there that everyone needs to be aware of. Obviously, the US government just recently announced their initiative, Project Vault, and that is around establishing a stockpile of critical metals. Now, I think they mentioned three, as did the US government, the Australian government, three that they're focusing on, and gallium was one of them. So the imperative is coming out of the US, it's coming out of Australia, that gallium is very, very critical. We will be in the US, I think it's early March, participating in, as a part of a government delegation, participating in talks with the US government and potential investors. The Australian government initiative, 1.2 billion, we've already had a couple of discussions with representative of that initiative, if you like, and that's still being worked through as to what that's going to look like. I think both of them are talking about stockpiles, but we'll see where that ends up. I think the funding will reach a bit further back into the process, given that there is currently no viable supply. Just on the growth, and you know, I encourage everyone to do their own research, but on the bottom right-hand corner, it suggests that the compound annual growth rate is around 15.8. We've seen some crazy numbers out to 2050. Probably not going to put them there. We'll wait and see how those fundamentals stack up. But certainly there's plenty of growth. There's no supply, and governments are very much focused on that supply, on establishing that supply. A couple of things out of this. We are a first mover. We've established a high-grade JORC resource. We've shipped gallium, or at least test material for high-grade gallium to our US partners. That's arrived. We have engaged local expertise in producing a high-grade concentrate. Following on from that, and we expect that to be fairly successful in what we know so far, a scoping study we put together. The bottom one there, really all that's illustrating is the divergence in price between the Western world, if you like, economy, and what's going on in China. Obviously China have supply, so the price has been pretty stable, but if you look in the Western world there, the prices are definitely going up. Just a quick note on, and the real important one on this one, I've talked about most of the other stuff, but the green ring there shows gallium in terms of GDP disruption and the probability that it might happen in the US economy. And it is 100% that, or forecast 100% that it's going to happen. And it's very high in terms of the economic cost. There's a few rare earths there as well with it, but it's certainly right up there. Hence the focus from the investment coming out of the US and Australia. A little bit about the Mons project itself. As I mentioned at the outset, we're exploring a greenstone belt, a new greenstone belt in Western Australia. We're situated just north of Southern Cross and south of, say, Mount Magnet. Logically, there should be a greenstone belt there, and as it's turned out, there is. We're not quite sure why it was overlooked for so long. There's been a couple of companies out there looking for gold back in the 90s, early 2000s. It's not easy country to explore, a lot of cover. but as I think we're pretty much on the way to proving, it's a significant belt. We've had a couple of discoveries other than the high-grade gallium, and that's around copper nickel PGEs and copper zinc, which I'll talk about a little bit. The rest of it I think I've gone over there. So I suppose the takeaway from that a little bit is that it is also an emerging copper province. And as I said at the outset, when we went to have a look at the Block 3, we were actually looking for copper zinc. The two most mature, if you like, exploration efforts are our the Hampson Dome, copper nickel PGEs and massive sulfide. It's an orthomagmatic copper nickel system. At this point in time, we discovered that using VTEM and follow-up EM ground surveys, and it remains open. We've had it interpreted as a mechanically remobilised sulfide, presenting as a conduit. We've just done gravity and magnetic surveys over that, which are being interpreted to look for what the source of that is. So it's a highly promising prospect. And also the sneaky squirrel Gossan, which is very similar to Gossan Hill in terms of the geochemistry of the Gossans themselves. We've drilled a couple of holes into that and found the mineralisation underneath, highly magnetic, so the magnetic survey will be a key in finding further mineralisation there. But certainly two that are very much alive, and we'll be putting a fair bit of information out on those in the next couple of months. Just to summarise, we're a first mover in a lot of ways in a hardly known commodity being gallium. We've got a large tenement package, over 3,000 square kilometres. It's a new greenstone belt. There's a rapidly increasing demand for gallium. We have a JORC-compliant high-grade gallium resource. We've connected into the US market with collaborative agreements. We're in talks with both the US and the Australian government in furthering that, and in particular with access to capital and the critical metal supply chain. We have copper, nickel, zinc and copper, zinc and a little bit of gold there as well, I think. Prospects, got a good skill set. We've got good support, good government support. We have worked closely with CSIRO, Curtin University and GSWA to establish that greenstone belt and do individual studies, particularly on the gallium mineralogy. So we're pretty much in a good position. There's a little bit about watch this space, I suppose. We expect a fair bit to come out of the US trip, and we expect this to rapidly connect into the supply chain for gallium into the US. Thanks for your time.